something that we should do hand in hand with regulation. And maybe one last comment. Will this happen nationwide? Maybe we will have 3 or 4 ecosystems later. One in China for sure, because of the closeness of people loving technology and being very open to use it. One in the US, I'm also very sure. I think Asia will also come up, and Europe maybe will come up with a solution, or will take one from the West or from the East. But I think we will find those regulated ecosystem areas happening in the world with a less complex architecture as a baseline.
Thank you very much. And Hua, can you?
Yeah, I would like to share my reflections with 2 steps back, so as to give you, a broader understanding about the regulations. 2 steps back, that means from the China's perspective. So the first level is about nation's strategy, then moves to industrial policy, then moves to regulation. Okay. So from that perspective, what we can see that China, the development of the electric vehicles or new energy vehicles from a broader sense is under the constraint or under the objective of 3 missions. One is about national security, second one is the industrial development, and the third one is the environmental protection. So for the first part, it is about to reduce the energy, fossil fuel energy dependence from the overseas market. So this is the first objective, and so it's a question of the national security. Secondly, is about technology leapfrogging from a sense that ICE technology towards the new energy vehicles, and the third one is China is facing a very challenging carbon neutrality objectives, and the development of the new energy vehicles can also partly contribute to that. So with those 3 combination of 3 objectives, then China decided in the 1990s to really engage in the new energy vehicles. Then it is escalated towards the industrial policies, to giving very clear roadmap, quantified objectives to make that happen. And the result, if you compare the industrial policies objective and the reality, is that collectively manner, we reached the objective earlier than we expected. Right. And then move to the third part is about the regulation, and just to give you some striking figures, in the traditional way, China on the road, less than 200,000 people die each year because of the car accident. And to echo your reflection, and that is really also a clear strategy of the nation to say that by 2030 we really want to build an AV market, right, to reach L4, otherwise L5, as a kind of technology choice, so as to reduce the accident on the road, from the sense that the calculation, as you mentioned, by computers compared to a human being, for sure, human being can have a holistic way of understanding, while if you are drunk, if you are talking to the others while driving, etc., your concentration level is maybe significantly lower. So that here the regulation not only to simply put the constraints on top of the shoulders of car makers or industrial players, but from a perspective of the well-being of the citizen. Right. So, yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, all of you, to the answer. So if we come from this autonomous driving, maybe we can come to the mobility as a service, this sharing issue. We know that smart mobility is desired by many countries and also by the customers. The only problem is that there's a lack of profitable offers. There are no profitable offers, and it's difficult to change the behavior of the customers, which is very often habitualized. So they do what they ever did. And now the question, do you believe that mobility as a service will make a breakthrough through this seamless mobility offers, and that you can make people to give up their habitualized behavior? And do you expect a change in mobility behavior? And I would start from John Paul, then Elmar, Hua, and John.
Okay, promise a shorter response.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I expect any specific mobility as a service offering to have a kind of breakthrough ahead of all the others. Uber is reporting some profits now. How do we interpret that after how many years of subsidization they had from VCs? Anyway, but we know profitability is not easy and is elusive, and also that competition can be quite effective from local companies, not global companies. Grab in Singapore, Free Now in Germany are a couple of the ones that we all know about. And the early funders of Uber were expecting monopoly conditions after that incredibly rapid growth, and that hasn't been what's happened. So I just think there'll be more growth in multi-mode mobility, and we already see it in cities. I see it more in Europe. I was in Germany for Munich and Berlin for a week. City bikes, e-bikes, scooters, all those kinds of micromobility. I think you just have more people making more different decisions about their mobility mode on any given day. Now, at what point does that erode somebody's need for a car? In the U.S., where many families have multiple cars, at what point does it mean they go from 2 to 1? These are kind of important inflection points. But that change in behavior, maybe a bit more incrementally, I think, does amount to a shift in mindset. I mean, people who have to jump in their car for everything don't necessarily love that, and if they had better alternatives, they might choose it. And of course, the U.S. is very different in not having as many, good rail alternatives. I do feel like one thing that may come to public transit is trying some of the same kinds of technologies that have been successful with ride-hailing, and I hear some transit agencies talking about essentially flexible bus routes. So, you have smaller vehicles, probably more van-like than buses, and they aggregate demand and tell people to go to a particular place at a particular time, but that routing may change throughout the day. Via is one company that's decided to work almost exclusively with public transit agencies around the world on these kinds of things. And I'll just close with the observation that I think is one of the most consistent findings in transportation studies, that when mobility gets easier, cheaper, faster, more convenient, people consume more of it. So we could see a rise in people moving away from cars into multimodal mobility, and still vehicle miles traveled in cars could go up. The only way probably to drive down driving in cars is raise the cost of it. And certainly in the U.S., the fact that New York City, which was so close to having a congestion pricing plan that was going to fund public transit and, of course, reduce congestion, being put on indefinite hold, maybe cancellation virtually by the governor, Democratic Governor Hochul, and no clear path forward. Many people think that dooms other similar congestion pricing ideas in U.S. cities at least. So it's hard to raise the price of transportation in order to accomplish a policy goal.
Thank you, John Paul. Elmar, how do you see it? Is that a special American point of view?
Yeah, I think maybe we have a different pace in certain areas when we talk about the adoption of mobility as a service. So I think in urban areas you will find more offers, and you will also have a higher adoption rate. When you come to rural areas, I think it will still take some time, because I think we have to accept that from a business case perspective, most commutes in the more dense areas are also more profitable. And if this would be really a breakthrough, then I think we should really join forces with our public transport organizations, because they are subsidized heavily. And I mean, if we would have an overall plan and one digital platform that I don't need to choose a different app when I go from Munich to Berlin, for instance, then I think we would be advancing much further. But I agree, maybe again, China could be closer to it with WeChat and applications that are already giving a common platform that you can use in order to solve also the public transport issue.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That leads to Hua.
I think that people are moving, right? People are moving around, in not only in one country but even across continents. So, and also let's take a look on the demographic composition. You know, the fact is that at a global level, roughly 70% of the people are living in the urban area instead of the rural area. So that is a first factor we need to take into account to understand which will be the focal part to provide the mobility solution, so 70%. Secondly, I think that in different countries we are facing another challenge is about the aging society and a low birth rate. So if we continue that perspective, then the AV with a cheap solution will become you know, mid or to long-term alternatives. I do believe that Tesla is taking that initiative, and that is the reason I suppose there is a deal between Tesla and the China government to, you know, reopen the access of the China market to Tesla in such a way that it can, you know, train its model to improve, reach to another level of the accuracy for the autonomous drive. So that may be a win-win solution both for Tesla and for a China market. So as to give you a figure about, you know, the number one in China to provide mobility service is not Uber, but its former competitor, in fact, you know, Didi. The monthly active user is around 80 million passengers, including me. So, in fact, when we're talking about mobility, Didi is not only provide that service. If you take a look on the, you know, the frequency of the service, it's moving from ride-hailing towards ride-sharing, then towards car-sharing, right? And the end, from the perspective, the end-to-end, this type of company like Didi, they are also providing the service like e-scooters or bicycles. It's a really end-to-end solution. So from coming back to the car part, I think that we can bet on the new waves of the technology come from Tesla, empowered by artificial intelligence. It can significantly change the business model to say that that will become a kind of a combination of the Airbnb business model plus Uber business model. That means what? It means that imagine you can buy a cheaper artificially intelligence empowered autonomous vehicles, so you can drive your car for the work, then that vehicle for the rest of the part of the time is becoming a taxi to help you to earn the money, right? So, and also to release the parking space, and then it will go for charging also in an autonomous way. So this is what we are expecting to really revolutionize the future landscape of the vehicle market, both from the productive perspective, hardware plus AI-empowered autonomous driving, then towards the mobility solution so as to both win for the buyer of that type of car, win for the mobility solution, and win for the metropolitan who is pushing towards the smart city. So that, at least that is my personal perspective about the future smart mobility that can reach the triple win situation.
John, do you also see these revolutionary changes who are just developed?
Yeah, I think that, among the panelists, and I'm sure in the audience as a whole, there are different mindsets and different assumptions, and largely based on different experiences. So you come at this from different angles, different places, different industry backgrounds, and the rest. And so it's very interesting to pick up on that, how we see things differently. And it just shows that we need to learn more from each other, because we're learning all the time. From my point of view, I think that when it comes to the smart mobility, then there's a logic that says it makes sense. You must have shared mobility. But of course there are many different forms of shared mobility, and I think that one of the big challenges for shared mobility is to get away from saying that you have to, in a sense, reproduce the experience that you have if you own, drive and maintain your own car, and very often that's what people say they want to do. And of course that means that if you own, drive and maintain your own car, then the things you might prioritise are ease of access, door-to-door mobility, route customization. You're not going where the car wants to go, the car goes where you want to go. Appropriate vehicle, meeting certain expectations and minimum standards. You don't want a car that's just been used by somebody with a very smelly dog as your next automated. So you have to have some, the people running the car have to have some control over, the state of the car at many points during the day. And you want safety. So, and if you sort of go down that route, firstly, it's very complicated. But secondly, it's also maintained, it helps to maintain, paradoxically, the problem of the individual car. Because if we're thinking that, one of the big challenges we have is how many miles do cars travel in a particular location during the day, then if you get no reduction in that, you don't get any of the advantages of lower congestion and all the rest. Or you might, as Jean-Paul said, the Uber case in New York, where apparently there's been an increase in congestion with Uber. So that then means that we have to be thinking, how do we break the individual mentality and not just reproduce it in the context of the shared vehicle? And I think there, and of course, many of the incumbents are absolutely committed to the individual model. Again, going back to the Mercedes Sunnyvale presentation last year, the mindset was absolutely the individual car owner with their Mercedes customized to their particular needs, updated, to give them the experience they want. They can, including things like entertainment, organised regionally, so Chinese companies on the entertainment and mapping and information, different to the ones they would use in the US, for example. And I think, therefore, the challenge is to how do you make the collective provision more effective? And I think the good thing about collective provision is that it tends to be local, and then that means so local journeys, particularly in cities, and that means that you don't have to have the infrastructure in the whole world to enable for your car to function. Because level 5, the dream of level 5 is drive anywhere, which means that you have to have the infrastructure everywhere. And I think that looking at localized solutions, and maybe solutions that simplify the challenges, whether it's car lanes, different pedestrian access to roads using automated vehicles. I know that this is unpopular, and that governments or local authorities are worried about how much that would cost them to implement. But I think we have to work out how we simplify that AV so that it will come in sooner rather than later.
Oh, thank you. So you combine this
Well, I would
mobility
like to quickly echo John's remarks, and the first point is that when we talk about mentality, my simple reflection is that if we are ready to share our house, I mean Airbnb, why can't we share our car? So, which asset is more valuable, right? So this is the first thing. And the second thing is that it is no more kind of a science fiction as what I have described. It's already existing. Taking a very concrete example to say that technical people are talking about ADAS, right? ADAS. So in a low speed situation, how autonomous driving, how the autonomous parking, and how the autonomous charging is realized. Give you an example like the NIO car, N-I-O, right? NIO car, the overall charging with your hands-free, it's about 3 minutes. You simply click on your screen, and the battery is, it's not a charging but a swap, change the battery, right? From when you park to the station, and then till the moment when you go out, it's 3 minutes. It's done. So this is today, people, as a passenger or driver, you sit in your car, you give a command, and it's done in completely process. It's 3 minutes. So it's on the way about this type of future, my personal vision about the future autonomous vehicles, not only driving, but also parking, charging, etc.
Yeah, thank you for this scenario. It's definitely scenario 2, but for this you need to cooperate. So car manufacturers, the OEMs need to, maybe they need to cooperate with tech players. But tech players are struggling in the automotive industry at the moment. So despite their value at the stock market, there are difficulties in the cooperation between the established OEMs and the tech players up to now in many countries. Between, for example, Mobileye, Intel and BMW, it's not so easy, or between NVIDIA and Mercedes-Benz, we see problems. So it's apparently there are maybe specific skills that are important in the automotive industry. And that's the question. Do you agree to that? Or do you believe that the difficulties can be solved in forms of cooperation? Or do you think that the tech players will gain dominance and that they will revolutionize the thing? So that's my question, starting with Elmar, and then John-Paul, John, and Hua.
Yeah, I think it takes more than a press release or a handshake between two CEOs in order to get tech players successful in the automotive industry. We have seen a lot of that. We have seen a lot of presentations. We have seen a lot of great announcements, but we have seen very little concrete outcome and result. And why? That's always the question that I try to find an answer to. I think what the tech players underestimated is the variations and the inability to scale. If I'm a tech player, I would like to have a standard device like a computer or a smartphone, and I just roll out and scale to billions of devices. If I'm in the automotive sector, I have even difficulties to go from one model to the next model within one OEM, because they have so much variations, so much customization in architecture, so much of embedded software deeply buried inside the architecture of the vehicle that you will never reach once the vehicle is shipped. Or you have to plug a cable into the vehicle in order to get some information out, which is for sure not scalable. So I think when we want to really see successful collaboration, I think it's still possible. I think the race is also still open, but the automotive industry needs to understand where they can let go and where they don't really differentiate. So I don't believe in OEMs developing their own operating system. I don't believe that there's a business case behind, because nobody really cares as a user which operating system is running in my vehicle. But there's so many billions of dollars spent in development of own operating systems in a vehicle that you cannot really, I think there's no business case behind, absolutely not. So taking maybe an open source, Linux-based vehicle operating system that you could use, at least for those areas where you are not safety critical, I think this would be a first step. And we will see this happen. So I think there's big communities, tech communities, developers joining this area and entering the automotive space with operating systems that are commonly used and have a large developer community behind. And I think that's something we have to always reflect. It's more than marketing. It's really about granting access to millions of developers that create these great solutions in the ecosystem. If you don't have access to millions of developers, it will never scale. And I think then, if you limit it to the employment base of your own OEM or supplier, then you usually have very poor services. They're usually centered around the product, but not very innovative and not really appealing to many users. So I'm for opening up. I'm really concentrating on those things where you are great and differentiate, but please leave those areas to others where they really have shown and proven that scale is possible.
Yes, thank you. John-Paul?
This isn't the focus of what I was going to say, but I think this issue of how expensive it is for every company to develop its own operating system. I have engineering colleagues at Penn that I'm working with who think that applies even more so with autonomous vehicle software. Like, for every single company to develop their own is massively expensive and duplicative and unnecessary. So they're part of a consortium for open source autonomous vehicle software, full stack. So very interesting, and leads to a whole different set of future scenarios for the industry. But I wanted to return to something I said at the beginning. I think autos and tech, and big tech particularly, will need each other, yet will find it difficult to work together. They have somewhat complementary knowledge. Each wants control, each wants data, each wants a higher share of value creation, and so I think we'll see a lot of combination. I think it's a very period of a lot of ferment, a lot of experimentation. We'll see a lot of combinations and alliances tried. Most will fail, some will persist. Now we have Volkswagen and Rivian announcing today, a big investment of Volkswagen in order to get access to Rivian's software and approach to software-defined vehicles. So we'll see if that pays off. Certainly solves a big problem for Rivian of a big capital infusion right when they need it. I think all of this is example of what Michael Jacobides and Jennifer Tyne are calling, in a still untested, we're doing a little beta test here, Schumpeter Mark III innovation dynamics. I can't go into it very much, but Schumpeter most famously in 1911 wrote that startups will engage in creative destruction, and that's the driving force for innovation and, in fact, for capitalism. Closer to the end of his life, 1948, he wrote another book where he said, oh no, the future of innovation is going to be controlled by large corporations that have giant R&D laboratories and budgets. And so we're saying Schumpeter III is kind of captures more the current moment when you have incumbents, let's say here, legacy incumbents in autos working with startups, with new firms, but also with legacy incumbents from adjacent sectors that are trying to enter and have some relevant competence but don't have other relevant knowledge. And so you have all manner of combinations. You have M&A, you have alliances, you have consortia, you have JVs, and you have a kind of effort to kind of cut across these different sectors. I'll just give one kind of case study example that I think is worth following. We'll see if it is representative of just a transitory moment. But there's a nice paper coming out soon in Research Policy by Reischauer, Engelman, Gower, and Hoffman called External Collaboration in Cars, Co-opetition with Apple and Google. It's a 10-year case study of a leading European manufacturer, luxury, so it can't be too many choices, and how they initially cooperated quite a bit with Apple and Google to offer CarPlay and Android Auto, and then at some point realized they were losing kind of control, and then they started imposing limits on what further data they would grant, and started to develop some of their own apps to have at least some branded presence before the customers. And so phases of collaboration, phases of competition, in order to get there. I think we may see more of that to come.
Okay, and John, and please a little bit short.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I think that probably in 2018, when you said the tech companies are coming, we were thinking of the ride-hailers, we were thinking of Apple, Google, and whatever. I think the tech companies we're talking about now are the NVIDIAs and the Qualcomms, Intel, the people providing a lot of the basic hardware for automated driving. I think then the question, Elmar's observation, I think were really interesting, and I think challenging for people that come from, like this audience and us, come from the auto industry. And so one issue is whether, do we go straight from proprietary auto industry systems for automated vehicles to open source generally available, or is there an intermediate where there are a number of specialist hardware and software companies, like the NVIDIAs and Qualcomms of this world that provide customizable solutions that firms can, particularly the front end, the consumer interface. Although, as you said, you don't think that automotive companies, are very good at the front end either. So I'm okay. Yeah, and so I think that I think yes, there are a number of futures there that I'm not quite sure how that's going to go. But I think that one of the interesting questions is just how far will the NVIDIAs and Qualcomms of this world want to go? I saw a thing from Microsoft where they made a point of saying, in the past we've tried to put branded products into cars. It doesn't work. Now we just want to give the basic infrastructure and be well, not Intel inside, because Intel do make a point of saying that they're inside, but the hidden stuff beneath the surface. But how tempting is it to want to go beyond that? Certainly in terms of how much hidden stuff. How much do the tech players want to produce, as I mentioned before, a more or less complete system, a turnkey system for AV, and how much would incumbents have a role in customizing that or contributing part of that, and importantly, which of those models is actually more efficient and more effective and produces competitive cars. But I think that for me, one of the issues is that in order to have a complete separation of the tech companies and the car and just put a turnkey solution in, it has to be modular. And there is a price to modularity. And the price to modularity is that you can't actually push the boundary of the design rules that make modularity possible. So certainly in the high-performance cars or in the cars, maybe luxury cars of certain sorts, you always want to improve functionality and performance, and that tends to lead to breakdowns in modularity. Therefore, you need certain types of alliances. I think you see this in the mobile phone sector. And so it may be that you'll have different types of cars and different types of business strategies leading to different patterns of relationships between the tech firms and the automotive firms. And I'll stop there.
And a little bit short, please.
Okay, I think that this is an old topic while in a new context. I think that we are entering an extraordinary period of making the social experiment. If allows me to cut into two groups, one is the incumbents of global leading car companies, you name it, Toyota, Volkswagen, Hyundai, Stellantis, etc. Well, I also include Tesla into that group. If we enlarge the concept of a tech company, Tesla identifies itself as a tech company, but not as a car company. Okay, so this is the first group, and the second group, if it's talking about the Chinese car makers who has given a track record in terms of delivery of car models. From that perspective, I see the convergence is about how to manage the change management from large organizations. Here, the change management, if we further to provide a very general guidelines, is about a culture change, the engineering culture versus tech culture. Secondly is how to organize the organization change by integrating the new technology and with this type of paradigm shift. And the third is about the attitude from a previous vertically mindset, I am the OEM, I'm the number one, and you are my suppliers, versus a kind of round table form of dialogue and collaboration. So you are not my supplier, we are working together. So it's a concept of open innovation and the creation of the new ecosystem. So in the China market, we do see, if we can conduct also a 10-year case study, we are in the early stage to see the transition of Huawei from the service provider of that operation system, and progressively, with a higher level of intervention or collaboration to produce Huawei's car, probably in the future, right? So this is also an interesting case, and maybe in the future we can make a comparison about these two cases to see the hidden difference during a common trajectory of organization change or managing the change.
Thank you very much. So specialization here, and I was thinking, Tommaso, I ask you now. If I look at the time, we started a little bit before.
Yeah, we can.
I would like to ask. I wanted, or they planned to ask those two more questions, but I could only do this if they answer in one or two sentences. Or we skip it and you ask questions. What do you think?
We have times with the coffee breaks and the lunch, so we are not running out of time. Okay. So perhaps you can couple the two questions together and just ask the speakers to pick up one or two, so that it's more compact, and we have some time for the audience to answer questions.
Yes, okay. So and I ask you to really concentrate the answer. So I wanted to ask you a little bit differently. I wanted to ask Elmar whether the software-defined vehicle, because he's a partner for software-defined vehicles, will change the whole value chain in the automotive industry. And the final question I wanted to ask all of them, how much value creation will stay with the traditional OEMs? Maybe you can answer both, yes, but short.
Okay,
thank you.
I'll make it very short. I think there will be a dramatic change in the value chain, going towards an open ecosystem world, which will scale. Because connected systems, you have always to think about a vehicle that needs to connect to something. And even if we are super successful in China already, I think the question is, how will it work in Europe? How will it work in America? So you don't bring your ecosystem to other regions. And OEMs usually don't like to build special regional models. So they would like to have one model, like we are used with our smartphone. We can travel around the globe, same hardware product, and it's standardized, working everywhere. This is something that we are still facing in order to scale, because I think this would really help to bring the business case in. So my perception of how much will the OEM play a dominant role, I think it's 51%.
Thank you. So, John Paul, if you hear this, do you think that the established automotive companies can keep up? They are dividing like Ford into different branches, and Renault is doing the same, like Ford Pro and Ford E and Ford Blue. So do you think they can keep up with those tech players and with this software-defined vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of excitement in the sort of financial community about the idea that everything, splits apart into these separate subsidiaries. They imagine then innovation can be faster, and there's of course always a lot of work for such firms any time you have splitting up or recombining or things like that. Look a little bit closer at the examples. Ford is separating design but saying they keep manufacturing and supply chain together. GM looks at Ford and says we're not doing that because at the moment there's still enough even design commonalities that we want to maintain dialogue across the two. Renault seems to be hesitating about separating Ampere from the rest. Look, I think ICV and BV are eventually going to have different platforms and different architectures, but I do think there will be mutual influence and spillover. So the focus on lightweighting, which is really important to make EVs have long range, some of it I think can spill back to still needing to have better emissions performance from ICE EVs. So I guess I don't see that kind of splitting up of the traditional OEMs into sort of new and old companies going forward.
And how much value-added will stay with the traditional OEMs?
So I'll give you my premises here. I think the tech companies don't really want to compete in global automotive because it's too hard and the margins are too low. It's not so easy to succeed as a brand new car company because there's so much to learn. So there won't be that many tech entries, and there won't be that many startups that succeed. And the OEMs may be slow, but it's a slow clock speed industry, and that's reinforced by a lot of things in the regulatory context, etc. So I'm going higher to probably sort of 60% for the 65% for the legacy incumbents, 25-30% to the new global OEMs that survive, Tesla, BYD, maybe a few other Chinese and a couple startups, and no more than 10% to big tech as a supplier, new supplier, and not as a sort of master of all with the dominant OS for the entire industry.
Okay, so here now we have different views, and Hua, I wanted to ask you whether the competitors from China redefine premium, and how do you see that the established and foreign OEMs will compete in China? And your estimation of the value added the traditional OEM.
So again, based on the cars new electric vehicles sold in China, the price tag can reach the level of ABB, Audi, Benz, and BMW. So this is a kind of the proof to mention that Chinese are buying sort of premium or even luxury cars from China. The reason is about the Chinese consumer's perception is changing. So technology is ranked the first instead of then about luxury stuff, right? Just like in the hi-fi industry, today we still have the vinyl, music, and it's becoming a kind of antiquity stuff, or a new old fashion. While for a mainstream to capture the main market value, technology that gives you an easy life, a comfortable life. It's really important. For example, including the charging, right? You needn't get off your car, and your car being the battery being replaced. There is also the new forms of the service whatever, software as a service or providing a service. Those are the new part to interpret what can be a new definition of the premium or luxury. Yeah, maybe I stop here.
And how much value creation do you see
How much
with
value creation?
established OEMs?
My figure is pretty close to John. I put 21, 25 coming from China, and I still see the domination of global car makers for the following reason. You see that those companies are listed companies, so CEOs have the pressure about keeping the profitability. Okay, so how to manage that is during the tenure of his positioning. You need again manage the profit generated by the traditional car, and on the other side you need inject huge amount of money for the radical innovation. The history on the last 10 years has already proved that leading OEMs fix the ambitious objective about case, etc. But CEOs facing that constraints, they have to make rational decisions on that path. And the result is that the change is not reaching the fixed objective. So that is my personal understanding about that. And then you take a look on the level of the profitability from the Chinese car makers. They are, from one side, supported by the government, but the government don't have too much money. But venture capitalists, they are also fueling that from a more perspective like the Tesla logic, right? Not looking for short-term profitability, but to say that let's make scaling up of the business first. So it's another, again, it's two different types of the game. Yeah.
So then, thank you. The last question to John. Do you think that the established OEMs can keep up with those Chinese? And do you think that foreign companies will